Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back. I had a great question on the last video that I uploaded, and it was basically just asking how you decide which side of the color bar you should make the face. So there's a lot of different ways to determine it. I can't cover them all in one video, but I'll just go through a few of the easiest ones and general ones that you can use. It should give you a good idea, but like everything, just experience will build over time and you'll not even think about these. Now, I need to do better in these videos and try to really, when I'm carving, maybe talk through the process each time, because every opal's different and it's part of the learning process. And I think it's valuable information for those just starting out, so I'll try to remember to do it. I used to do it a lot, but I don't know, slowly over time it kind of drifts out of your mind. And really it's a very helpful note to make at the start of a video and only takes a little bit of time, so I'll try to remember to do it more often. Now if we zoom in, you can see here there's a brief overview of them all, but we'll go through them one at a time, starting with the easiest. So, this one I have listed as shape. So that's this one here. Sometimes you'll just get an opal, so this is the one that I'm about to start working on. And you can see here it's a fairly bright coloured piece of shell, just a fragment of shell. I'm not too worried about it being a shell anymore, so I'm going to cut it all the way down and expose the colour and hopefully get something good out of it. But sometimes the shape of a piece will just dictate which way the face will be. Now this shell, it'd be just as bright on either side, but it's very rare that you want a concave surface opal. Whereas with the convex side, I could see this being used to make an earring or something. But around this way, it's kind of weird because you'll have shadow effects, you'll have bits that are covered when it's like this, whereas here you can get a nice broad face without any kind of shadows or hidden bits. So sometimes the shape will just tell you what side is what. Now, chips. So sometimes you get a piece of rough and it won't be fully covered up. Now this one, it's got a color bar that goes pretty much fairly close to the other surface as well. It's hidden a little bit, but this face has already been chipped at so much that I've really got no choice. If I start cutting in from this side, it's going to be a millimeter thick kind of opal at the end. Not really good for anything, but if I can deal with these chips and get a nice shape out of here, I can see a nice little teardrop, then this will be the face. It's just obvious that you can't pick the other one because this one's already exposed. And this happens a lot. It might just go through a tumbler and there might be a chip and you'll just see a window into the face. And if it looks good, then whatever, it doesn't really matter. But you've really got not much choice other than to use this now. So the next one, another fairly easy one, the color bar. So the colors in that color bar can dictate it quite clearly. Here you can see one side of this color bar, red. Really red. Now if I can get it to show the other side, there you go. Other side, blue. Now we like red more than we like blue. So this one, even though it's a bit of a shell, it's a bit of a bad example, but even though it's a bit of a shell, I'm just going to lose that top bit there, go across here. It's also fairly thin, so it's not going to be the thickest stone. It's going to be a very small stone. I'm actually thinking of cutting it into two and making earrings. But we want that red, we don't really want that blue. So sometimes the color bar will have better color on one side than the other. So that'll help you decide. Another fairly easy one, potchy. So there's two examples here. Potchy is when you've got, I'll give it a little bit of a wet, you've got some clear color on one side, but it starts getting potchy towards the bottom. So you'll clearly want to take that as the top because it's going to have the most color and less potch. Whereas here you're going to start getting to that milky kind of look. So this is a piece of crystal. It's fairly clean at the top, but yeah, it just gets cloudy towards the bottom. This is another example of a similar kind of thing. It's got some nice color at the top, but it starts getting to that hazy green, and that's just not going to be any good for us. Now this one I use a lot when I'm doing Mintabee, so this is a Mintabee piece. I've called it dark versus light, and sometimes you can get a color bar that's slammed between some dark potch Oh, we're not getting the focus we need. Dark potch, as you can see at the top, and then just white potch. Now, just because there's a black line of potch doesn't mean that you're going to get a black opal out of it, because it's the body tone where the colour sits. So it's still probably going to be a white opal, but you never know. If you do get really deep and just in front of this, it can actually affect the body tone of the opal. So in most cases, I like to go and take this then as the front, because you can see here that it has a better chance of showing colour when it's on a dark backing. This is also a fairly good description for a later kind of criteria that I'll go through, but this stone will come back up then. Now, crystal. If I go all the way up here, crystal. Crystal is pretty basic. It's clear all the way through. You can go either way. It'll probably end up being a doublet anyway, because you need a backing to get the colour to jump out. But really, it makes very little difference when it's that crystal clean. Potch bar. This one is when you've only got potch on one side and not the other. So it's hard to see, but there's a line of potch across that top part, whereas this has colour right up to the crust. So it'll just be a matter of taking off the crust, and then that's going to be our top and our face of the opal. Thin crystal. Similar to normal crystal, you can go from either side. You can flip a coin if you want. You're most likely going to want to take both sides off and doublet it. If it's this thin, or if it's colour bar that's not a full crystal opal, like the previous one up here where it was clearly much more crystal, you can see the shadow in the background. This one's less like that, but it is fairly thin and fairly crystalline, so once you take off one side, it will be about 1 millimeter thick, and you could go triplet or doublet with it. A really low domed doublet or a triplet. So it doesn't matter too much. For this one, I think I would be tempted to just see if I can manage to get away with taking off this side. It's a little bit of a thicker potch line, but when I'm saying thicker, I'm meaning like fractions of a millimeter. So sometimes you're really thin for choice. And the last one. So the last one I call angle shooting. Now, angle shooting is where, if I can get the colour here, is where you've got this opal. So this one's got a couple bars pretty close together. You can sometimes hold the opal at an angle where you can still see the bar, and you can actually just keep an eye on the colour play, and sometimes one face will just be way brighter than the other. So in this case, I'd be aiming for this to be the top side. So the face will be going in that way. And that's where I'll bring back this Mintabee stone, because I could see it a bit on this one. Mintabee is always a little bit of a pain, but sometimes you can angle shoot and get it to work quite well. And I can see that it's playing a little bit nicer this way up. So that backs up the dark potch kind of idea as well. So that's good to confirm. Whereas this way, it really doesn't play much at all. But there's always exceptions to the rule, especially with Mintabee. Mintabee is a major pain, especially on the lower grade stuff, the beginner grade stuff. When you get something really bright, it's much more like Cooper Pedy, but on the lower grade stuff, it's really tough sometimes. And yeah, I mean, all opal's fairly tough, and once you've done it for a little bit of time, you'll get the hang of it. I reckon it's really good to get a hold of one type of opal and start mastering the patterns, because it does always follow a bit of a pattern. There's outliers, but much of the time you can really get a good grip on a method of cutting and also a type of stone. So Cooper Pedy white will behave much more differently to some Black Lightning Ridge stuff or Boulder opal. I haven't covered anything to do with Boulder opal here, though some of these do kind of apply. And yeah, that's a bit of a brief overview. If you use a couple of these things to help you out, you'll have more nice faces than you'll have misses, so hopefully it helps. It's an incredibly good question, and it's something we don't really explain all that well, because once you've been doing it for a while, you kind of automatically just assume that everyone knows what's going on. but I think it would help beginners. So hopefully a helpful video, and I will see you in the next one because I'm going to start covering up this guy. So I'll see you in that video.